and point out some of the most important digital innovative digital business models and technology trends from China. And I think it's going to be surprising to some of you what's going on in China, and I hope it can be inspirational. Yes, it's true that Chinese companies are still best known as copycats. They are very, very good at this, but this is also changing very rapidly. I actually need the, sorry to my slides, I need the pointer, sorry. I just realized I missed a pointer. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yeah, sorry for that. I think all of you know Alibaba. That's probably the most interesting, most famous Chinese tech company. What is Alibaba? Yeah, it's a big e-commerce platform. Actually, it's not a one platform. It's more like a whole group. It's a huge internet company. It's a whole group of different platforms. And in many ways, it's actually more advanced than eBay or Amazon. And the size is actually almost as large as eBay and Amazon combined. So this is a huge player. And actually, it's not just e-commerce. In different new technologies that are currently shaping our future, and that we will be talking about here today, China is actually a front runner now. And this is a fact I'll share with you during my speech. I think you know Jack Ma, the founder of Alibaba, right? He's quite famous all over the world now. I interviewed this guy in 2006. As Friedrich explained, I'm a journalist. I used to be based in China for 3 years, and I covered all kinds of subjects. I went to Alibaba's headquarters in Hangzhou, just south of Shanghai. And I remember this guy telling me about his great visions for e-commerce in China, and he was talking about how Alibaba would be the eBay of China, and I thought he was a little bit crazy, to be honest. Today, Alibaba is one of the most successful companies in the world, and Jack Ma is one of the richest people on earth. So he took me, at least, by surprise. As you can see in this map, I've traveled all over China, as I said, covering all kinds of stories. But what is striking about this country is that it's actually not a country. You have to think about it more like a continent, right? So you have all these provinces. For example, you have Guangdong province down here with more than 100 million people. You have this province, Shandong, with more than 80 million people. You have a city like Shanghai with 26 million people. You have Chongqing, a big city in Sichuan province, 30 million people. So it's huge and cultural differences. It's not really one market, it's more like a whole continent, right? So this is important. When it comes to innovation, it's actually happening in several places in China. In the capital, Beijing, a lot is going on in software development. In the south, this is the traditional factory of the world. This is where all your gadgets are made, in the Foxconn factories, for example, in Guangdong. You have a center there called Shenzhen, which is very close to Hong Kong. They are evolving into the next step with the 3D printing and makers revolution. So a lot is going on there too. Shanghai is probably the most innovative place right now because it's a very international city. It has a very strong ability to attract talent and money from all over the world, as well as a lot of top universities in the city. So according to EY, the consultancy company, it's going to be the new Silicon Valley very, very soon. Look at these numbers. You have 1.4 billion people. You have 751 million internet users. So you might think about China as a country very far away, a lot of stuff going on in Chinese. Why would I even care? But my point is, you cannot ignore China. It's the biggest internet economy in the world, and all marketers eventually have to figure out how to reach Chinese consumers online, right? It's a growing middle class. It's a very interesting consumer group. 95% of them are on smartphones, online on smartphones. This means a lot of them never even owned a computer, so they went directly online on their phone, doing everything on their phone. You have 629 million people on social media, and this is primarily WeChat, the one and all app. I'll talk about that. To me, having followed China's development quite closely for the past 10 years, I must say I'm very surprised. I'm actually shocked what has happened within the last 2-3 years. You have a one-party state, a very, very tough political system. You have a very tough censorship online. You have a lot of civil control. You don't have basic human rights. How can China be a leader in social media? That's very interesting. Just a few words about what has happened. During the years, it has struck me that we tend to underestimate Chinese companies. I also did with Alibaba, to be honest. But when I asked Danish business leaders 10 years ago, how about your competitors from China? For example, the Danish wind turbine producer Vestas or Grundfos, Danfoss, some of the famous industrial companies in Denmark, they would say, come on, they are just copycats and their technology is at least lagging 15 years behind. Okay, 5 years later, when I wrote my second book about China, I asked some of the same people again, how is it going with your competition from China? And they're like, oh, we must admit, they are learning very, very fast. These companies are no longer just copycats. They actually look like real competitors. They are very cheap, they are very fast, and they are expanding all over the world. So this happened very, very quickly. And if you look at the picture now, actually Chinese companies are front runners in several industries. That is why it's dangerous to underestimate China. When you see this picture, it's actually from the high-speed train in Shanghai linking to Beijing. It's the fastest train in the world, 350 kilometers per hour. It was just relaunched this summer. What is interesting about this technology is that, of course, it was stolen from German Siemens and from some Japanese companies. They were inspired by the technology. They actually stole a lot of this technology, to put it straight. But no matter what happened before, they actually evolved into the biggest player in the world in high-speed trains. So China built more high-speed railroads in China for the past 15 years than in the rest of the world combined. And now they're exporting this technology. Here are some of the nice copycats that you know so well, right? Look at the guy in the middle here with the iPhone 7. And Le is a very, very famous brand in China. Actually, it's a very, very successful brand, which is a copy of Lego, our Danish Lego, which is called Le Gao in Chinese, which means high learning or high playing and be happy. A very good name in Chinese, actually. Yeah, it's true that you find these funny Michael Alone and Sunbox coffee cafes in China all over the place still. Have you ever thought about why is it Chinese companies are so damn good at copying? Why? Actually, it's something deeply rooted in Chinese culture. Actually, it's the Confucian culture, which is very strong in China, but also in Korea and Japan. You have this concept of the master and the pupil. So you have the karate kid studying his master's skills to be very, very good at karate. This is the way to learn, actually. And if you look at this character, the Chinese character, to learn, 学, it actually translates into imitate. And that makes a lot of sense. So if you want to be good at something, you have to find the best company in the world, you have to look at the front runners, and then you have to copy their stuff, and then when you reach a certain level, you can start re-engineering or redeveloping, which happened with the high-speed trains, for example, right? So if you go to the art academy in China, you'll probably have to copy famous landscape paintings for several years before you can actually do your own artwork. So this is very, very different cultural stuff. If you look at those internet companies, they have all been cloned in China. So in China you can't use YouTube, that's blocked. Facebook is blocked, Google is blocked, Twitter is blocked. So instead you have to look at videos in Youko, you can use Baidu. When you have to Google stuff, you Baidu stuff in China. Of course, you cannot read about everything. You cannot read about how Tibet was suddenly Chinese in the 1959, 1960s, or Tiananmen Square in 89, what happened there. But you can read a lot of stuff, and you have Sina Weibo instead of Twitter here, which is a microblogging site. So they have all been cloned. Do you know why? Why do you think the Chinese government didn't allow the American companies into this huge market? They saw what happened during the Arab Spring in the Arabic countries, right? Everything happened on Facebook. All the protesters agreed to meet online on Facebook and went down and actually eventually succeeded in their aims, right? So the Chinese government learned a very important lesson. We need to have the server in China so that we can block whatever is not wished online content, right? But the second reason, which is also very important, is of course it's the biggest market in the world. Why would they let Facebook earn money in China when they can develop their own industry and create Chinese jobs and Chinese wealth? We have seen this in the wind turbine industry, we have seen it in the cement industry, we've seen it in the auto industry. All industries that are strategic important for the Chinese government, they will do this because they believe this is the right way for their own prosperity. Of course, this is a huge headache for Mark Zuckerberg and Facebook. And now we just heard a very interesting talk about Facebook, Snapchat, all these social platforms from the US, and it's very striking to me how it's all about ads. It's very different in China, but I'll get back to that. This guy eventually realized, I cannot ignore China. As a public-owned company, you cannot just ignore like 750 million internet users. It's only half of China's population, so eventually it will be the double size, right? So he needs to find a way into this market. He's even running in the smoggy air of Beijing to show how much he loves China. He has started learning Chinese as well. He has married a Chinese woman as well. He has done everything he could, but it doesn't really help, right? There has been rumors during the summer, I don't know if you've seen this, that Facebook might be allowing censorship in China in order to get access to this market. This could be a backlash, I guess, in international media, but this could be a way into the Chinese market. But this is not confirmed. So he's also playing on another horse, another strategy. So they launched this new product which was developed only for China, which is called Colorful Balloons. You can check it out online. It looks very much like Facebook. It's a photo sharing app, but there's one big difference. The server is in China. So you might be thinking now, of course, WeChat and Alibaba, all those companies, Baidu, can be very successful in this market because they don't face competition from Facebook, Google, and other players. It's true, but it's much more complicated than that. And actually, if people want to access Facebook, they can. They can use a VPN and then climb the Great Chinese Firewall. But the big question is, why would they use Facebook when they have WeChat? And this is as you heard already, the one and all app. It's very, very different from Facebook and other media we know. Because this is what all social media or all digital companies in the world are dreaming of, I think, to make the one platform, the one access point for everything you need in your daily life. And they succeeded in this. This is why they take up 1/3 of Chinese people's online time. So they just use this app for everything. If you have a Chinese bank account, your interface could look something like this, but it could also look a little bit different. So if you download the app, how many of you have the app on your phone? Yeah? You probably have something to do with China, because then you will be forced to use it, otherwise they will not communicate with you. They don't use email anymore, I hear from them. But you can see you can book a taxi, you can transfer money, you can pay your bills, You can go shopping. This is very important. JD Jingdong is another big internet company, another big e-commerce platform. Like Alibaba, growing market share, it's actually integrated in WeChat. So it means you already have your WeChat wallet, and you go online and you look at all the stuff you can buy. It's all integrated, so you don't need to do any payment transaction. It's all included in this app, so that's what makes it so special. Then you have some, for example, this order taxi. If you look at Messenger in the US, they're actually copying this now. So you can find Uber in Messenger in the US in some cities. And this comes directly from WeChat. So we begin to see, or we begin to ask the question, who is copying who now? That's very interesting, because China is still a copycat country. There are some very interesting Chinese features that I would like to point out. For example, this is not something that would work in Denmark. We are only less than 6 million people. But can you imagine if you're in Beijing, you want to go out in a very crowded area, you open your map and you check out how crowded is this area before you go. So you have these red colors, and if it's really red, it means it's so crowded, it will take you 2 hours to use the bathroom or the public bathroom or whatever, and then you don't go. This is very Chinese, but it's very useful for people in big cities with a lot of people. Then they launched a gifting app. And I personally would love to have an app like that. So if you want to send flowers to someone or to your friend who did you a favor, you send her coffee. So this is actually a coupon or a voucher for Starbucks, for example, and it's prepaid. So people can go and pick it up, or you can even order it in the app. So it's delivered to the office. So all this without ever leaving the app. Uber was in China before, as you have probably heard, but Uber was actually not blocked. It just didn't make a good business case there. Because, who do you think is in this app? Didi Duchen, which is the Chinese, Didi Duchen, which is a Chinese version of Uber. And why would people download Uber if they have everything in WeChat? Again, the same reason, right? I want to share with you another thing that I think is very, very inspiring. And of course, again, it's a local Chinese thing, but it is not ads. It's not selling people ads. It's actually engaging with people, being very, very social. For Chinese New Year, Chinese people always hand out these small red envelopes with money to people instead of gifts. So they have a very strong culture for gifting, either money, or it could also be favors or fruit or flowers. But these red packages, hongbao, play a very strong role in Chinese culture and at big parties and so on. So during Chinese New Year in 2015, Tencent launched a virtual hongbao. And they didn't know how people would use it. But this was really, really smart, because in that way they had a lot of new people to sign up with their bank accounts, so they actually got deep into the Chinese people's wallets. Because people wanted to give out virtual hongbaos. That's very good. Instead of having to go there physically and hand out the hongbao, you could just send people a nice message and a hongbao, right? So the first year, 1 billion hongbaos were sent. The second year, 8 billion hongbaos were sent. And can you imagine how many was sent this year during Chinese New Year in February? 14 billion. So people send out a lot of hongbaos to their friends and family or business connections. But the interesting thing is that this is how Tencent, who owns WeChat, is making the money. Virtual products and games, not ads. Ads is new, and it's a quite small income still for this company. So I think that's very interesting to look at. You can also check your app, check your phone to find friends. It's very rare that Chinese people are alone anywhere, but if you happen to be alone, you can check the phone and find other WeChat users. Very social. Then they launched something called Little Apps, which is actually a little bit like a little bit like App Store, WeStore. And this is very important, because this could be a big disruptor to Apple. Why would you need App Store? If you have a phone which has internet and you have WeChat, why would you bother to have an iPhone and an app store. All the apps will be in the little apps. It's quite new from this January. So this could be disrupting Apple. We'll see how that goes. So the big difference is actually the way they earn the money and also the way they make people engage. And people are very, very social in this app. They of course share photos and everything in the moments, something similar as moments. So it can be used for all the daily needs. Another thing I want to share with you, part of the Chinese digital economy, is sharing bikes. This is quite new. I mean, before it was only stupid foreigners like me who would take a bicycle in Shanghai. Everybody who could afford it would take a taxi because it's so cheap and only for poor people to take a bike in the new China, right? But then suddenly it changed in 6 months. I came back to Shanghai in May and I was like, what are all these colorful bicycles with 20 young office workers on them? So it's because it's all in the app, in their phones. And of course, it's Alibaba and Tencent who is behind those big companies who are growing extremely fast. So you open the app and you unlock the bike, and you can see on all those yellow buttons where are the bikes. So if I take this bike, for example, I have to pay. But if I walk a little bit, maybe I will get paid to use the bike. So they are ductless. That means you can take the bike where you find it, and you can leave it where you want to leave it. This is very, very convenient for commuters like me. I wish I had one in Copenhagen like that, but it's not here. So this business model is very, very good, and of course it's all about big data. So the knowledge about where are people moving, how do they spend their leisure times, how long time do they stay in each street, etc. is very, very valuable for restaurants, travel agencies. So this is a big business. And of course it comes with a price. Now we see the Ofo company, the yellow bikes, which is backed by Alibaba, expanding in UK, US, Singapore. We don't know what will happen to the data. I'm not sure our lawmakers are ready for that at all. E-commerce is a very important trend. It's actually driving much of the innovation in China. As you know, it's the biggest the biggest e-commerce market in the world. Have you ever heard about the single shopping day? 11th of November is like Black Friday. It's just much bigger. You can see last year they almost turned over more than 100 billion kroner, 18 billion US dollar in one day, in 24 hours. The interesting thing about this is that it's extremely innovative and very, very advanced in the way they use different new technologies. For example, JD.com, which was included in the WeChat app, they have 1 year experience with drone delivery now. And you've probably heard about Amazon still waiting for the license in the US to operate the drone delivery, right? So we see the lax regulation in China, the Chinese government's willingness to try new technology, to test grounds and see what works, what doesn't work, is actually giving Chinese companies a competitive advantage. And that's why we have to pay attention to it, because the learning points that they do there, they can adjust to the regulation in our countries when we are ready, but they will have a lot of experience already with these technologies. So that I think is an interesting point. They are trying to find new ways to engage with their customers all the time. I just want to show you a quick example with a virtual reality shopping experience in Alibaba, which was launched last year. This guy who is wearing the VR glasses, he is landing in Times Square, New York, and in Macy's. Yeah.
Hi, and welcome to Macy's, the largest department store.
这个包蛮有趣的，材质也不错，买一个送我女朋友吧，国内都没见过。
So it's sent directly to the girlfriend's profile.
Got it.
Yeah, and why is this interesting for you? because a third of all the VR glasses that were sold last year were actually sold in China. So they do have the glasses, and that makes a huge difference, right? Another thing here is an 8-hour-long live-streamed fashion show that Alibaba did last year, and I'll show you a small session where it's Gap, the American brand. They have 29 million followers. If you don't understand the number, that's because they count in 10,000s in China, so it's a little bit complicated. But they have 29 million followers in Tmall, Alibaba's platform, and look how many people is engaging in this event. 96 million people are watching this right now, and they are sending like thumbs up and smiles, and they're even tipping the event. They're even sending gifts because they like it so much. They think it's fantastic. Let's hear it. So the point is you can buy the stuff that you see right now. So this is quite unique, and the unique thing is that people like it and they do it, they engage in it. I want to share with you a short example from Denmark this spring. We had a lot of invasive oysters from the Pacific Ocean, and the press worker in the Danish embassy in Beijing did a small sign away or post, like a blog post about, oh, come and help us, we have too many oysters and it's free, come and eat it. And the Chinese went crazy. 14 million people looked at this and thousands of them shared it. So this is a good example. If you make something right, like everywhere in the world, you can create a viral hit. But even for a small country and a small company, there are huge opportunity in these platforms in China, because if you do it right, people love it so much and they share it, and you have a lot of free publicity like this. I couldn't talk about all the new things and technologies today, but I have a list here so you can see these are facts. These are the areas where China is now frontrunner internationally. So social media, e-commerce, yes. Also fintech, because the way they use mobile payments is very advanced, and it looks like China might be the first cashless society in the world actually, which is interesting because they invented the paper money. AI is a new area, and the US and China is competing. China has set a goal. They want to be a world leader in 2030. And from my experience with China, you have to be very aware, if they set this kind of goal, they normally succeed. They invest heavily. The things that are special about Chinese innovators are these. They listen and learn. They listen to their customers. Of course, you would all say we all listen to our customers, of course. But it seems like Chinese companies are extremely good at listening to their customers. They listen, they produce the product. Sometimes they're only 70% ready when they are in the market. Then they get a lot of criticism and feedback from the clients, and they readjust, and then they produce new versions, very, very speedy. So the dynamic, the scale, and the speed is extreme. So, of course, it's not radical innovation that's coming out of China yet. They take technologies that we actually abandoned, like the barcode, the QR code. It's used everywhere. Even the beggar on the street has a barcode, so bypassers can donate money mobile. They don't even have to bring cash for that. So it's used everywhere. This is a known technology. And then they are very, very obsessed with the user experience. You can study WeChat and read about it if you want to know more. It's very interesting. And I think we can learn a lot from the way they use gamification. This engages people, and people think it's really, really fun to do that. So I think we can learn a lot from that. You might be wondering, how did this happen in China so fast? And you're right, I'm surprised. I follow the country very, very closely. I'm still shocked how fast it's going. But one of the reasons is that it's not new. If we go back in history, China used to be a big innovation center, right? The four great inventions: paper, printing, compass, gunpowder. So we are seeing China going back to the original position in the world. These people have a clear goal, as I said. These are the 7 people, top people in the Chinese government. Does anybody know this guy? What is his name? Xi Jinping? Yeah, we hear too much about Donald Trump and other people in the US, I guess. But it's interesting because do you know what they are thinking? What kind of goals do they set for the second largest economy, which will be the world's largest economy within the next 4 or 5 years? Imagine, think about how little you know about this and how little we know about what they are thinking. This gives Chinese companies a competitive advantage. They know everything about us. They know everything about Donald Trump because he's tweeting everything he's thinking, right? So this is very, we have to start looking into this and paying attention to it, even though it's difficult and there are many, many barriers. But it's another thing driving the innovation is in China, apart from the hunger, the hunger to have a better life and strong entrepreneurial spirit, you have a very, very strong government. We don't see that anywhere else in the world with that kind of power and money behind it. And when they say innovation and AI, for example, they really mean it. So the last thing I want to share with you is, of course, there are limitations to the authoritarian rule of China. So Tencent, who owns WeChat, they launched a chatbot in very few weeks ago. So that this bot was asked, "What is your Chinese dream?" The answer was, "Going to the US." "Do you agree with the phrase, 'Long live the Communist Party'?" The answer was, "Why would I wish long life to a corrupt regime?" So of course, this bot was sent through intensive re-education, and then it was relaunched again. So some people say this. You see, the political system, the education system, the civil control will be a barrier for Chinese innovation and for these companies eventually. But other experts actually say it might actually help Chinese companies advance their technologies because they need to be even more advanced, right? And more sophisticated because they have to go through censorship as well. We'll see. But it might be true what this Wired magazine front page said in the fall. It's time to copy China. We don't want to copy their political system. We don't like their copycats, but they have a lot of good business models and very, very interesting technologies that we should look at and get inspiration from. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, Christina. It was very exciting. Now you can go out and copy China for 10 minutes. We have a break now. Remember that the exhibition area is now open for all of you to test